Hi, I'm April N. And this week I'm going to talk about assisted suicide. There was a case in Oregon, which is one of the only states that allows euthanasia, where this lady wanted to have a less painful death. And so she asked the doctors to do euthanasia, which is assisted suicide. So they gave her a lethal injection, and she was able to die peacefully instead of dying slowly and painfully, which is what would have happened with her disease. And there's a lot of controversy about this because half the population says, no, people should live every single moment to the very end, and you never know, maybe they'll find a cure for the disease and in that time. And the other half says, no, they shouldn't have to spend the last months of their lives in pain, and they can go peacefully and happily instead of bedridden in a hospital and suffering. Now, this is my opinion on this, is that euthanasia is a good thing. I mean, it's merciful. You know, I lost both of my grandpas, and both of them had a very slow death. You know, they were much older. One of my grandpas on my dad's side, he suffered for almost an entire year, just pain, and he kept having heart attacks and strokes, and he couldn't get out of the bed, he couldn't speak. He was just there living out of tubes. So when he died, it was sad, of course, but at the same time, he found peace. And it was a little bit hard for me at first because he's my grandpa, and of course I cried and everything. But the biggest thing was that, you know, once all the tears were gone, I said, I'm glad that he's in a better place now, that he's no longer suffering. And wherever we go after life, at least there's no more pain. And the other grandpa, he went to the hospital. He was admitted into the hospital, and he knew going in that he wasn't going to get out. Like, he knew it was already his third stroke, and he just knew that he wasn't going to get out of it. So he was practically a vegetable for the last 2 months of his life. And the doctors came around and they said, hey, I mean, do you want to keep living off these tubes and we can keep you sustained for a few more months and then you're going to die? Or do you want us to remove these tubes and you'll just die sooner and not so painfully? My grandpa was still coherent enough to tell us that he did not want the tubes anymore. I mean, he couldn't speak or anything, but it was something in his eyes. The way that they were so like begging, like, please remove these tubes. Please don't let me suffer anymore. I can't stand it anymore. And just the way that his eyes said it, they just decided. And so it was very difficult because it's my mother's side, and there's like 7 siblings. So they were having discussions, and half of them were saying no and half of them were saying yes. And of course my grandma was saying no because she wanted to keep him by her side as long as she could, you know. But at the end of the day, the eldest sibling decided that it was the best for him and it was what he wanted to. So they removed the tubes and he went. It took him about a day before he passed away. And it was hard for me because when my other grandpa had died, he was living in Venezuela and I did not see him in person physically, you know. But this grandpa whom I had grown up with and I had gone to visit very often all the time, I actually got to see him physically, and it was a little bit hard for me to see him that way, and it was an impact. I immediately started to cry, and I had cousins who don't really talk to me that much. Like, we don't really talk that much. We get along, but we don't really talk that much. And all of a sudden we were like united in this moment. But one of the things that I noticed, one of the things that helped me come to terms with losing him was the fact that he looked so peaceful. And it was the most peaceful I had ever seen him. When before he couldn't walk and he couldn't speak and he couldn't function. And there he is laying on that bed and he looks peaceful. And that's why I think that euthanasia is good, you know, and I just think that more states in Oregon should have it. And I know people don't like it because it's still considered suicide, and it's still taking the life of a human being. But in the long run, it's saving so much, you know, saving so much pain and so much suffering. And yes, there is a chance that they can find a cure for the disease. But if they haven't found it in years, and then, I mean, what are the chances that they're going to get lucky and find it in this case, you know? So you just suffer and go through all these treatments that are absolutely terrible. And it's just, sometimes there's no way to do it. Sometimes you have something that's completely inoperable. There are no treatments. There are no cures. And you're just going to sit there and suffer and be in agony. So why not? Why not have the doctors give you a peaceful death instead of you having to take it into your own hands and just shooting yourself or overdosing on pills or whatever it is? I mean, why would you have to do it that way when you can go a peaceful way, where something can just be injected into your IV and then you can just sleep and it'll be a peaceful way to go? I mean, almost everybody says that they would prefer to die in their sleep. So they should at least be given the choice if they're going to die anyways, you know? So that is my opinion on euthanasia, and it's so controversial, and probably half of everybody who watches my videos, like 5 people, don't agree with what I have to say, and that's fine. It's my opinion, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to make it a law or anything. It's just, this is what I feel, because I saw how much more peaceful they were. My grandparents were. My grandpas were when they went. And it was just, it's what I would want. If God forbid I were suffering from something like that, I would want to go peacefully and just sleep and not have to suffer for months and months in complete agony. And before I would do it, I would try to enjoy every single moment so that I would say that I had a full, complete life. And then I would go to Oregon and I would say to them, don't let me suffer anymore. And that is my opinion. And it's very intense and very, very heavy, I think, this topic. So hopefully next week will be a little bit lighter. And I'll see you next week with a new topic. Bye.